What's going on, everybody? Today we're here to talk about censorship. What's Trudeau's plans for the future? Why is he cracking down so hard on your social media account? And what Bill C-11 means for you? Coming up soon. Okay, so many of you will remember Bill C-10. Now, that was brought in prior to the September 2021 election by the Trudeau Liberals, and it was very similar to the current day Bill C-11 in that it was aimed at providing some updated guidelines to the CRTC, which currently regulates television and radio across Canada. And it was brought under the guise of updating standards and most notably to help Canadian content creators get their stuff out there a little bit easier. This was the guise, and it is translated into Bill C-11. So this is called the Online Streaming Act. Now, it is a long bill. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I will put the link in the description below if you're interested in having a look at it. Basically, it looks at enacting and putting social media and creator content under the guidance, so-called guidance, of CRTC. So if you think right now, and I don't know the exact breakdown of it, but if you were to listen to standard radio, a portion of the radio needs to be Canadian songs. Same applies to TV. Nothing more frustrating than trying to watch the Super Bowl, and every time it cuts to commercial, you get the same boring commercial over and over and over again for 3 hours straight. That's what the CRTC does. It also regulates phone and a number of other things, and essentially it squashes competition in Canada and really makes it difficult to bring any new innovations to market, to see any progress in the digital space. Now, we put this organization in charge of the internet, social media companies. What good is going to come from this? Absolutely nothing, in my opinion. So if you want to check out the bill, it's there. I'll include this link too. This is from Michael Geist. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. So he was a strong individual speaking out against Bill C-10. He's continued that work on against C-11. I believe he was a university professor in Ontario. And this will probably give you a little bit more of an easy to follow summary of kind of what's going on. It kind of outlays some of the stuff that the Heritage Minister, Pablo Rodriguez, has said in recent days. So there are exemptions for the social media services under 2.21. But Michael goes on to say that, yeah, well, if you look down into section 4.2, there's exemptions to the exemptions. So this big, long, convoluted bill, it just leaves all these little loopholes open for CRTC to say, well, yeah, we're not going to monitor your dumb cat posts on Facebook, but, maybe there are certain cases where someone that's putting out some independent news media, something of that case, starts to fall under some of these regulations. And with the bill being so broad, it leaves it open to interpretation of bureaucrats. And given that it is, funded and paid for by the government, just like the issues we face with CBC, probably going to run into similar issues with CRTC being a little bit biased towards the governing party that's in at the time. So what has the Heritage Minister said about this bill? Why is he bringing it in? What is the supposed benefit to Canadians? Well, they've stated that it's going to make it easier for Canadian content to be seen. So typically, and I'm sure you're well aware of it, there's algorithms in the back end of all these programs. So if you're to watch a home renovation movie, then probably the next time you go into YouTube, you might find a couple more home renovation videos. And the algorithm kind of tries to find the videos and stuff that you might like. You know, some people might say that's convenient. Some people might say that that's, you know, the way that they generate revenue. And if you were to look at a platform, you know, such as Twitter, where, you know, you get off into these silos where the content that comes up is only, you know, within your viewpoints or your principles, then we start to have these fractured groups in society. And I think these algorithms are a big cause of this. But Heritage Minister seems to think that this is a big bonus, that it's going to bump up Canadian content and help people locally get their stuff out there. So this is an article that indicates some feedback from YouTube regarding this. So YouTube says Bill C-11 could impact the earnings of Canadian content creators. Seems to be contradictory to what the Heritage Minister is saying. So if we go down here, YouTube says Bill C-11 could cause Canadian content creators to lose foreign revenue if the government forces the promotion of Canadian content. Well, that's not very useful. Canadian Press reports a briefing from the company says the legislation, also known as the online streaming app, will downgrade the popularity of Canadian content around the world, cutting into the earnings of creators. Well, I think that's a bit counterproductive to the main messaging that the Liberals are putting out there. So why else might the Liberal government be deciding to go down this road? And I think it's simple. There's been a lot of talk lately comparing Trudeau to a dictator. Now, you can take this comparison for whatever you want. I have my opinions on it. Feel free to hit me up in the comments with your opinions on it. Now, there's definitely things that, you know, you cannot make the comparison to at this point in time. But one such thing that you could do is look at some of the censorship. You know, back in Soviet-style Russia, you know, bringing in books of certain authors or topics, you know, that was banned and forbidden, and getting into this internet censorship is just another way of controlling people and forcing the government narrative out there. So just recently, this is Melanie Joly. She is the Foreign Affairs Minister for Canada. So she has said Liberals to censor the internet to fight Russia. So now it is, you know, their prerogative, or what they think is the right thing to do, to go and censor speech online in order to push back against Russia. Now, you might not agree with what Russia is doing, but in order to have free speech, you need to have both sides of the story. And if the government is picking out part of the content that ends up online, you know, how are you supposed to determine what is what? You know, you sit here and say, well, maybe it's good in this case, but how do you know that? And if the government's doing it in one area, what happens when they go and do it in another area and it is detrimental? You can't leave it up to the state to determine what is free speech and what isn't. You know, free speech just has to be out there. You know, that is the point of it. Even though you might not agree with someone, it needs to be out there. You know, we already have laws in place that, you know, deal with hate speech and those particular items under the criminal code. So to say that we need to, bring in new legislation to crack down on the internet, it just ignores the fact that we already have this stuff in place. So if we go down a little bit here, it seems like the policy response from the Liberal Party that answers all of Canada's problems. When in doubt, censor the internet. In this case, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly has proposed this as a means of solving Ukraine's problems as well. Trudeau's foreign minister believes that it is within her mandate to censor what she deems as Russian disinformation as a wartime measure. How is she going to be the judge of that? How does she know any of this? Stating, my mandate as the foreign minister is really to counter propaganda online. I would say that is nothing further from the truth. Your mandate is to promote Canada's interests on the foreign stage. Simple as that. It's a tricky role. There are, a lot of big personalities on the world stage that one would have to deal with, but enabling that type of discussion on the world stage would help Canada become a bigger player in, getting our products to market, protecting ourselves here at home. If we, presented a strong stance on the diplomatic scene, a whole lot of these issues are what would typically be in her purview, but she is stating that no, she's here to counter disinformation. So going on further, first of all, that's not within her mandate. Yep, Foreign Affairs Department is supposed to promote Canada's interests on the international stage. Secondly, this is ridiculous since we have not declared war on Russia, yet it looks like we pretend we did to curb free speech domestically. And it's just one more thing that the Trudeau government has kind of done to go down this path, to being a dictator. We've got the freezing of bank accounts in Ottawa. We've got censored speech coming out. Anything that you do that defies the narrative of the regime, they are taking steps to block that dissent. Now, if you go look up any history book or anything that's currently going on in, different regimes around the world, these are the steps one would take to get there. And no, we do not have, similar laws and jurisdiction and outcomes as some of those, dictator regimes in the past, or, some of the places such as China and North Korea today. But this is just being this slow creep of authoritarianism. And, I've seen a lot online too that people have said, quit complaining, quit, saying that you're fighting for freedom in Canada when people have it, so bad in all these other countries. And I have no doubt that they do. But to ignore the fact that our government is slowly taking these steps to get to the point where these countries now find themselves in should be cause for concern for everyone. It doesn't matter which political party you typically support. We should all be for free speech, and we should all be pushing back against any and all legislation that the state tries to bring in to suppress free speech. So, what do you think? Hit me up in the comments below. Let me think if Trudeau is heading down the dictatorship route. What is the real purpose of Bill C-11, the so-called Online Streaming Act? And number 3, because solutions are important, what do we do to fight back against this? What are the steps that we need to take to make sure that we don't see the creep of authoritarianism continue in Canada? Peace.